Well, good morning, community. Welcome to Stroke TV Show. I'm your host, Aaron Abla. I am brain. I'm 11 years post-stroke and brain aneurysm. On today's show, I'll be introducing a guest named Jen Ferrone. And what would you do if you, at age 35, had a stroke? And I'm hoping that he touches a little bit on because it took him several months to diagnose as a stroke. So let's get right into it. Well, good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Aaron. How you doing?
Really good. How about you, bro?
I'm hanging in today.
Now you are in Jersey.
Correct.
So I really appreciate you being here and being on the show. And we're here to hear about your story and what you're doing. So let's jump right into it, can we? What were you doing? Very first, introduce yourself. I did. You're Jim Ferrone. You live in Jersey, and you're one of the people that live 5 miles away from me and born.
Yes.
You're talking about. So
I didn't get very far. Yeah. Yeah. So, I've lived in New Jersey all my life, and I've lived pretty close to where I am right now for most of my life. Before stroke, I was working for Johnson & Johnson. I was a senior document technical analyst, which was a title they made up for me. I was started as a contractor, and they liked me so much that they created a position for me. I'm a lifelong fencer. I have competed in the sport of fencing since I was 13. At the time of my stroke, I had recently earned my A rating, which is the highest you can earn in this country. So I was among the elite, the top fencers at the time. Actually, in the competition where I won it, I had injured my elbow. So I had spent a long time trying to rehab it and physical therapy, and it didn't work. So finally had surgery on it. So at the time of my stroke, I was just starting to recover. I was actually in pretty much the best shape of my life because I was really working hard to get back. The day of my stroke, I actually had a fencing competition that day. I not only competed, I was running the event as well. So I was kind of doing two jobs, and I did okay. I was still rehabbing, so I wasn't expecting to do great, but I did okay. And it's a long competition. Fencing is it's a very physical sport. You use all your muscles, and it's very good. Cardiovascular type of sport. So I got home and I was exhausted. So I just kind of collapsed and laid down on the floor on my back. And now I have two dogs. At the time I had a Shepherd mix and I had a Chihuahua Italian Greyhound mix, a little dog. And he did something he's never done before. He jumped on my chest and started licking my face. That's not something he does normally. So I turned my head to the right to avoid it, and I felt a crunch in the back of my neck. And there's that crunch, and then there's like a beat, and then my head suddenly exploded in pain. It's just the worst pain that I could possibly imagine in my head. It took all my strength to push this 9-pound dog off my chest and turn over, grab my head for 5 minutes or so. And I believe my wife was doing the laundry at the time, so I don't think she was in the room then. So my first thought was I got to do something for this pain. So I went upstairs to take some Tylenol, and I couldn't make it back downstairs on my own. I called for my wife, and she got me and helped me downstairs. And so my left leg was weakening, and that I could feel. What also was happening is my balance wasn't great. What happened was my right eyeball started going back and forth involuntarily, just constantly on its own. So whenever my eyes were open, I would get a vertigo. So at the time, our insurance plan had just changed, and we thought we heard something like if you're going to go to the emergency room, you need to call your general practitioner first, or they could penalize you or something like that. And since we didn't really understand what was going on, it's a Sunday afternoon at 5 o'clock, but we called our general practitioner and waited for her to call back. And thankfully, she called back in like 20 minutes and said, "Yeah, go to the hospital now." So got to the hospital, and my wife got a wheelchair for me and wheeled me in because at the time I couldn't really walk anymore. And they brought me in, and my memories are a little fuzzy here. My wife says they gave me the FAST test.
What?
They gave me the FAST test, the FAST. So that's when you're having a stroke. I might as well, for those who don't know, if you suspect someone has a stroke, there's a test that you can administer. They call it the FAST. The F is for face. You have them smile. You look for if one side droops, that's a sign. The A is arms. You have them raise both arms. If they can't raise one or one drifts downward, that's another sign. The S is for speech. You have them repeat a sentence back to you. If it's slurred or if it's just wrong, that's another possible sign. And the T is time. Time is of the essence if someone's having a stroke. If you notice the signs of a stroke, you want to call the ambulance right away. Don't mess around. Don't try to do what we do and have my wife do it. Let the ambulance do it. Most of the time, what happens with a stroke is there's a clot in your brain, and they have a medication that can take care of that, but it has to be administered within the first 3 hours to really be effective. So it's incredibly important that you get to the hospital as soon as possible. So
that's called a TPA, right? That's a
yes,
TPA.
correct. I always forget that. You're right. In my case, it was not a clot; it was a bleed. So the action of turning my head apparently severed the artery that feeds into my brainstem. And of course, when that happens, you have blood flowing into the brain tissue instead of getting where it's supposed to be going. And so some of your brain cells start to die, and that's why you lose some function. Thankfully, in my case, there was a secondary artery that kind of took over. And that dissection kind of healed fairly quickly on its own. But I have a lot of lasting issues from it. So I passed the FAST test, and they took me into the first room that was available, and they ran a battery of tests. I remember some of them. I don't remember. I remember they took a lot of blood. I remember they did a spinal tap, and it took them 4 tries to get it.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was brutal. The first couple were fine, but the third one, the Novocaine or whatever, was wearing off, and I really felt the third one, and the fourth one was brutal. But they got what they needed, and they ran a bunch of other tests. They did a CAT scan, I think. One of the things that happened, my body. So I had been fencing all day, and I hadn't really eaten too much, but my body was freaking out, and it decided it needed to throw up, but it couldn't. So it took me an hour to throw up. I went to the bathroom, and I was trying to force myself to, because I knew something needed to come up. I'm not someone who throws up often. I've thrown up twice since I was 11. My body just doesn't want to do it. So it took a while. I eventually did it. There wasn't much in my stomach to begin with, because I hadn't really been eating that day. But they took me back into the room, and I was laying down on the gurney. And because of the eyeball thing, every time I opened my eyes, I would get kind of a vertigo, I would get dizzy and feel sick. So I was laying there with my eyes closed. And the doctors thought that I was asleep, so they were talking over me. And I heard them say, "It's not stroke. It's not lupus." And they were kind of trailed off after that. I tried to say it's never lupus, which is a House MD joke, but they didn't hear me. So yeah, they pretty much immediately ruled out stroke. And the next day, I think they gave me an MRI. And they said that there was evidence of a bleed, but they thought it was an older bleed. They didn't think it was from the day before. So they really didn't know what was going on. I was in the hospital for 5 days. it was really 4 days before I could open my eyes enough to even watch TV or anything like that. I was just feeling ill. And they were just basically trying to rehabilitate, get me walking again. And I still couldn't, but they're trying to keep my leg strength up and do that kind of a thing. And I remember it was my mother and my wife were there like constantly with me. And like the third day they said, they came to me and they said, we want to put you in a facility. And that scared me. Someone said, we're putting you in a facility. My brain immediately goes into, well, they're going to lock you away and you're never going to be seen again.
Right.
I know your brain goes to the worst thing. And so
Yeah.
I said, no, I'm going home. And they're like, this is really be for the best. And I said, no, I'm going home.
Uh-huh.
So they're discussing this. And they're like, this is a really good place. And my brain was saying, I don't want to. So then I was listening to my wife and my mother talk about how they were going to completely reorganize their lives in order to care for me and watch me at home. And I felt like I was being really selfish. And I said, all right, let's go to the facility, which was a great decision. So on day 4, it was the night before I was going to be transferred. At 3 a.m., they brought in a roommate for me, a new roommate. This gentleman was 65. He was over 300 pounds. And I don't know exactly why he came in, but the first thing they did at 3 a.m. was give him food. And he immediately choked on it. And for the next hour, I had to listen to this
Oh, my goodness.
really loud for an hour.
Not what you want to hear.
No. You're waking up 3 a.m. You don't want to hear that for an hour. And I'm like, all right. So he eventually fell asleep, and I finally fell asleep for a couple hours. At 7 a.m., he wakes up, and he's completely disoriented. And he's shouting like, where am I? Where are my clothes? What's going on? And no one's coming. So I finally start hitting my button. And the nurse came in, and they helped him out. And they gave him more food. And he started choking again. Making this horrible, horrible noise. My dad had come to visit from Maine just to check on me. And he's with me for a little while. And he says, Jimmy, I'm so sorry. I love you dearly, but I cannot stand this noise anymore. I'm like, I understand. If I could leave, I would too. Because he was doing this for hours and hours and hours. This upset my system so much. I started having the hiccups. My hiccups didn't go away for 2 weeks. For the next 2 weeks, they would go away for no more than 10 minutes at a time, and they would immediately come back, which might have been the worst part of the stroke. It was really, really awkward and uncomfortable, and it hurts after a while, and it's just difficult. It's difficult. You have to calm down and have to go to sleep, and then as soon as you wake up, they start again. So, but anyway, that day, that Friday, they took me to this rehabilitation facility, Kessler in New Jersey, which is an excellent facility. And, they gave me a room, and I was in there for 10 days. And, they have doctors and physical therapists and nurses and the whole staff. They were actually really good there. And the one thing, when I was in the hospital, I couldn't really eat. One of my vocal cords was completely paralyzed. So when I swallow, I choke. Even thin liquids, I struggled with. So I basically, they would give me smoothies, and I would choke down a couple bites of a pretzel in a day, and that was it. So I wasn't really eating much. It didn't help that the food that they were offering at the hospital was awful.
Right.
I mean, it looked bad. So we get to Kessler, and they have a chef on site, like a personal chef who was fantastic. And he cooked up whatever you wanted to. And so I was like, I had my restrictions. I'm like, all right, let's try to get something that I'm not going to choke on. And his food was fantastic. So when I was in the hospital, I lost probably 15 pounds from when I had my stroke. I was fencing that day, so I probably lost some weight from that. But from not eating and all that, I lost 15 pounds. I gained it all back at Kessler because I started eating, and the food was so good. But I had, I always want to point out that I had excellent nurses, one nurse in particular. So I was, I couldn't walk. So I was in my bed all day basically, and except for when they were doing physical therapy or I had some other occupational therapy or whatever. So it was the last or the second to last day. It was like 2:30, and I thought I want to get up and I want to get out of this room. So I got myself into my wheelchair and I rolled myself outside the door, and I just wanted to sit in the sun. It was March. It was a warm day. I just wanted to sit out there. My medication was supposed to be taken exactly at 3. Exactly at 3:00, my nurse somehow found me. I didn't tell anybody I was going. She just came in, she gave me medication, didn't say anything, didn't scold me or anything like that, went back inside. She was fantastic. There were some really good staffers there. So day 10, I'm in the middle of a physical therapy session, and one of the administrators comes in and says, Jim, I'm sorry, we have to go. And I'm like, why? I'm in the middle of a therapy session. It says, your insurance company called and they said that you shouldn't be here anymore. They said that you should have left 2 days ago. He said, we argued with them and said that if you wanted him gone 2 days ago, you should have called 2 days ago. And so, all right, they at least did that. But I had to get pulled out immediately. My wife and mother had to be called, and they had to come and immediately get all the equipment it was going to take and get me home. And so at the time they had to buy, the toiletry stuff, pull bars, a wheelchair, canes, a walker, all that stuff on the spot. So, I mean, we did, and thankfully, we had a friend who was nearby and a neighbor who were both big guys, and they were able to get me inside because we only have 2 steps, but there's a slight grade to it, and my wife and my mother weren't going to be able to do it on their own. So thankfully, they were around to help out. But we had to get in and obviously just get set up for me to be there and not walking for quite a while. My doctors wanted me to be there for like another week at least, but insurance wasn't having it. So
that's so true. That insurance really is, and it shouldn't be that way, but they dictate a lot of your care. They do at the end if they do.
It's like, I don't understand why they would think I shouldn't be. They're not here looking at me. They haven't even seen me. So why would they? It didn't make any sense to me. And there's a lot of anger there, but what's done is done. Yeah. They were sending me a physical therapist like 3 times a week to come and work with me at home. She turned out to be like someone I knew from school, which is just an odd coincidence. But we did that for a few months, for maybe 2 or 3 months, and then I went back to Kessler as an outpatient for a while.
But you were saying earlier in the green room before the show,
right?
They didn't really know you had a stroke in the beginning, right. And it took how much time went from the time you experienced a stroke to the time they actually diagnosed you with stroke?
It was about 2 months. So yeah, the first hospital medical center, they didn't. The neurologist basically said, "I don't know what's going on. I want to send you to a university hospital where they might have somebody who's more up on new things and might know a little better." So they sent me to UMDNJ, which is an excellent hospital, by the way. And I had a good doctor. They ran every test that they had. They ran tests they've never run before. They did some blood, and I was waiting in this room for an hour, and the woman came outside and says, "I'm so sorry for the wait. There were some tests that he's ordered that they're not in the system because we've never run them, so I had to look them up manually." But everything came up negative. So they didn't know what was going on either, so they sent me to Penn in Philadelphia. And the doctor in Penn was an older guy, and he basically just looked at me, and I had an MRI first. He looked at the results of the MRI. He looked at my stuff, and he basically said, "Yeah, you had a stroke."
Correct.
Just casually like that, just that easy,
Well, I do. Can I back up? I have a question because you brought up something I find very kind of intriguing.
Okay.
that your dog
Yes.
actually sensed before you had the stroke,
Right.
started acting peculiar
Yes.
around you.
That's something that we've always wondered. I always joke that he tried to kill me. He caused the stroke, but yeah, he was not a dog who would jump on you and try to lick your face like that. So it was very strange that he did it. So he might have sensed something was off.
Yeah, and I can see a part of this.
Yeah.
So they sense that something is about to happen before it happens.
Right.
And he saw it was coming.
Yeah.
But you know what's amazing? Here you're age 35, if I remember correctly.
Yes. Correct.
Did you know what stroke was before you had one?
Not really. I mean, I sort of casually, but I didn't really know what it was.
Yeah, that's like me too.
Yeah.
But that's a majority of strokes of ours. We really, I have mine at 47, so you were a young pup.
Yeah.
When you had yours, but at age 35, you know, we get in our minds that that only the 8-year-olds, you know, older people have strokes. But that's really not true. I have over 5,000 members in second chance strokes by giving that. I would have to say the average age of stroke is probably in the late 30s, early 40s. It's not in the 80s, not 90s. It's,
Right.
You know, so.
I will say that when I was in the rehabilitation facility, they were clearly used to patients who were older, because I was kind of, I was kind of put in groups with other stroke survivors. That's primarily who was there at the time, and they were generally older. And I remember my first day of physical therapy. It was this young girl, very small young girl, and she would take my vital signs. And if your heart rate was over 100, we're not going to do anything. We're just going to sit and stretch. If it's under 100, then we could try whatever exercise that they were going to do. So it was almost always over 100 because that's just how my heart rate was at the time. It was just different from whatever was going on. So basically, we did nothing in that first session. The second session, the head of the department took over, and he just says, "Yeah, walk." Like, you don't want to take my vital? I was like, nope, just walk. Just try to walk. So it was vastly different. But you know, the first girl was like treating me like, you know, I was about to break. And
so were you walking independently in the beginning? You weren't you were in a wheelchair?
No, I was in a wheelchair. There were a lot of the exercise was trying to walk, just trying to go through the motions to see if I could do it using a cane or using a walker. It was, I'd say 2 months before I could walk with just a cane. And that was very, very carefully and slowly. I was in a wheelchair for, I would say, 2 weeks after I got home, which was itself 2 months after the stroke. So it was probably a month after the stroke. I was just getting out of the wheelchair and graduating to a walker. I hated the walker. I really did. So I got out of that as fast as possible. It took me about a week, and I was using a 4-point cane for a little while. And then I graduated to a regular cane, which I still have. I still use. Right now, I'm using it all the time because I have some sort of new issue coming up that came up.
Do you still have eye problems? Correct. Do you still have left? With your right eye?
I'm sorry?
Do you still have eye issues? Do you have any eye issues?
So yeah, you can kind of see that my one eye droops. I'm trying to force it open so it doesn't look as bad right now. But if I relax them, my one eye will droop quite a bit. I don't have any vision issues anymore. I don't think, but actually, that's not entirely true. So the glasses I have on are prismatic, and basically they said what happened because of the drooping that my eyes are not focused together correctly anymore. So these are corrective to basically focus them correctly.
So I'm curious, Jim. You said you didn't know what stroke was really when you had it. But I'm curious. Here you are at age 35,
right? And
you have stroke. Mm-hmm. But was there any prior warnings that you were going to have a stroke? Do you have any physical warnings before your stroke?
No, like I said, I was in the best shape of my life. I was eating better, and I was, drinking well, and I never
Yes,
drank alcohol or anything like that. Never smoked. Shaped my life. So there was no warning at all.
that's really unusual. I can remember, remind me to get you talking to Shelby Jensen because she is also what they call a para fencer.
Right.
And she in a wheelchair fences. And she just went to the Olympic Games 21
Right.
and participated in Olympic Games. And it was pretty amazing in fencing. So remind me, Jim, because you guys got something coming.
I actually just got a friend request from her the other day. So
Yeah, she had her stroke when she was like 7 years old.
wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm curious. I'm curious. What you're working now, correct? You're working
Correct.
now.
Yes.
You're able to work. You have limited, no paralysis.
Correct. So, right now I'm going through something that we're not entirely sure is related to the stroke. But I've developed this incredible pain in my feet. So particularly in my left foot, but both feet, I take a couple of steps and they both feel like they're incredibly swollen. And I have a lot of pain. It's constant pain in my left foot. And that's really driving me nuts. A couple areas.
It's not neuropathy.
It does. That's what it sounds like. So they did a test for small fiber neuropathy, and he said that's not what it is. They did a biopsy, but yeah, like you said, I don't know. They did an MRI in my brain. They said that checked out fine. They did an MRI in my spine. That checked out fine. On the foot, that's fine. They did an X-ray. They did a nerve conduction study. It all came up clear. So we don't know what's going on right now. I'm still trying to find a doctor who's going to figure this out. But I've seen a lot of them in the last few months trying to figure this out. In the meantime, I need a cane to walk, and I can barely walk a few steps. I use a wheelchair at work. I do have pain in my upper left thigh, which is from the stroke. And I probably walk a little strange because of that. I probably have a little bit of a limp or something like that. Excuse me.
Jim, can I ask what?
Sure.
If I have to ask if the stroke is a journey, it's a lifetime journey. You've been on for the rest of your life. But I'm curious, what lessons, if any, did you learn from stroke? The journey you've been on right now. Did you learn anything from it?
I mean, educate yourself.
Well, I mean,
is one.
For me, it made me more grateful to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
So, what did you learn from it?
In a lot of cases, you just don't know what's going to happen next. So you have to be kind of ready for anything, and you have to be able to deal with anything. Your life could change suddenly on an instant. I mean, for me, it was not just the stroke. I was on disability for 6 months, and I came back, and 3 weeks later, I got laid off. So I was looking for work as I'm still trying to heal. And of course, this is 2010, 2009, which is one of the worst job markets we've had. So it was impossible to find anything. It's only kind of dumb luck that I found my current job, 3M. I got a cold call from a recruiter, and I happened to respond. And this place actually is 2 miles from where I live. And
3M has been pretty nice thing about it. Actually adapted for you somewhat, right? They made it. They're actually great. Use a wheelchair.
Mark. So when I first got there, you couldn't really tell I had a stroke. I was hiding it pretty well. And I do say hiding it. I didn't tell anybody. Somebody had said to me, you don't want anybody to know you have a stroke, because I went as a contractor and I was trying to get a permanent position. And so I only told 2 people because I needed some help. I am face blind. I do not recognize faces. And at the plant, everybody wears a hairnet, goggles, and a blue smock all the time. So it's impossible to tell someone from the next. It's difficult to begin with. But people would come in, and I would have to have somebody who I could just ask, "Who was that?" And a couple people were very understanding and would help me out. But otherwise, they didn't.
That's right. Yeah, facial recognition. That
Yeah,
you forget you can meet somebody and they walk back in the room 5 minutes later, you wouldn't remember.
right. I 2 times I failed to recognize my own mother. I went to a supermarket. The first time in particular, it was a supermarket that's near me that I don't usually go to, and I saw someone, and I'm like, I wonder, is that my mom? I don't know.
Oh no! Oh no!
I hung around her for 5 minutes, waiting, hoping she would like look at me and recognize me, so I didn't have to do anything. And finally, I heard her cough, and she's always had a very distinctive cough, her whole life. And that was the only thing that finally told me this is definitely her. And I basically stalked my mother for 5 minutes. But then another time,
It's amazing, Jim. And you and I were talking before the show. Every stroke is like a fingerprint.
Right.
Every stroke is different.
Yeah.
And I get man, but non-ability to facially recognize someone I've never heard of till now. But it just should go to show the stroke affects everyone differently. And
Right.
just there's there's those saying unlike you. Well, you were so unique as stroke survivor. I've never heard of it. But tell me what your support group around you, your wife, your family, your friends, what was it like?
My family was very supportive. My wife in particular, she had to do a lot, and I really appreciate everything that she did. She was the one who was working regularly, so she was stuck in a job that she hated, but we needed to have the money at the time. And she did everything else, basically did everything else for me. So she was great. My mother was helping whenever she could. My mother was fantastic. Also, they were my sisters. They were taking turns driving me to therapy and just helping out and doing whatever was needed. So they were great.
By the way, Chubby Jensen, the bear fencer, she's in the audience right now.
Hi, Shelby.
So Shelby, you need to connect with Jim Ferrone and talk to him about fencing. You guys have a passion for fencing. Do you still fence for Jim? Do you still do any fencing?
I because of the issue with my feet, I can't right now. I was coaching up until the pandemic hit. Actually, the day our last event was the day before everything shut down.
So maybe now Shelby can turn you on this pair fencing. You could actually fence in which I didn't know that. And she could be the Olympic Games of pair fencing. So
Right.
pretty amazing. It's a small world, but you
Absolutely.
like that. So talk to her about that.
I'm sure she knows Mickey. Mickey's the coach of the national fencing team, the national wheelchair fencing team. He was at our club. So let me back up one step. When I had been with 3M for 3 years, I had still not told anybody, and a position was opening up. So it was a permanent full-time position. At the same time, one of my fellow instructors had a series of mini strokes, and his personality changed. He was suddenly unkempt. He was suddenly like rude. He was like not showing up for his stuff. And he got fired from his job. They'd been there for 30 years, and no one really knew what was going on. We finally talked him into going to a doctor, and they said you'd had a series of mini strokes. And soon after that, he had a full-blown stroke, which took his life. So in my brain, I'm like, you know what? This is more important. I need to tell people about stroke, because I didn't know what was a stroke, and no one knew what to recognize in my fellow instructor, and he died because of it. So I'm thinking I have to do something. So I went to we have a nurse at 3M, like a full-time nurse. And I asked if I could get her support on a team meeting, just to do like a short 2-minute presentation on stroke awareness. And she like kind of paused, and she said, my mother just passed away from a stroke. Take all the help
Really?
you need. Yeah. So I gave like a 25-minute presentation on stroke, on every facet of it. It's probably way too long, but it was very effective. I think people say someone, at the time I was 30, 38, or 39, however old I was, saying I had a stroke several years ago, and it's someone that they know, it becomes a little more real to them, and
Yeah.
so they pay
Yeah.
attention. And so I think that made them, because it was a personal thing, that I think that made the message very effective. Our site manager at the time asked me to come in and give a presentation every year after that. So I've been doing
Really?
it every year. Yeah.
Well, that's great.
So that I wound up getting the job. It did not hurt my position, obviously. But the other part of this, the other fencing part that I was trying to get to, we decided to hold a competition in his honor, like an annual memorial event. We call it the Mitch Davis Memorial Competition, that we hold every March, which it coincides. That was around when his birthday was. That's also when my stroke was. So it was kind of it was about the 1 year. The first one was the 1 year anniversary of my stroke. So we're putting this event together, and it was just going to be a competition. And I decided, you know what? Let's do a fundraiser for it. And I didn't know what to expect, so I set a goal of $200. And my wife says to me, "Jim, you're going to do better than that." And so I said, "All right, I'll make it 350, and then if there's a difference, I'll make up the difference, so we'll get the goal." So I put this up, and by the end of the first day, we had beaten that. We had more than 350. So I said, "All right, let's make it 700." By the end of the first week, we beat that. I put it up again to like 1,200. We beat that. By the time we got to the competition, we made close to $6,000.
Wow.
So it was just the support from just the fencing community and my friends and family was just phenomenal.
Now, this was a fencing
It was a fencing competition. So,
competition.
but we did a fundraiser like up to it. It was like an online fundraiser leading up to it. We did a bake sale there and took some donations on site as well, but it was primarily online. And so I believe, I'm trying to remember the details around this, but I believe one of the things I said was if he raised $3,000, then I would fence in this inflatable dinosaur suit. And so I fenced an inflatable dinosaur suit. Obviously I was limited in what I could do, but if you're in a dinosaur suit, you're kind of limited to begin with. So
You do what you have to do that's amazing. I don't think people understand how devastating financially stroke is. I mean, for us, we've lost everybody. My wife and I lost everything but our house and during stroke. And I think it's admirable to see people stepping up and raising funds to help survivors. Stroke TV started to be Stroke TV Foundation, a 501c, but was very successful at raising funds. But so now Stroke TV Media, which is a standard corporation, and they're going to be pursuing them. But really, we wanted to get together and raise funds for survivors in need because what I call the ripple effect for sure. It's not just by you and I, a stroke. It's our wives, it's our family, it's our friends. It ripples across many people.
absolutely.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty committed to that. But it'd be interesting to see if you Shelby do something fencing.
Yeah, sure.
I've never seen it. I may have seen on TV and what's all,
Right.
but fencing. There's something. I'm not sure which one you Shelby was there. You're both fencing, both fencers, and that's unusual to me. It's very unusual.
It's a great sport. It really is.
It is it. And I don't know very well.
Right.
So
We'll have to expose you to it.
Well, I'm curious. You went from you're now currently working, you're walking, you have very little deficits. Now, it's been how many years later?
It's been 12 and a half years. It'll be 13 in March.
Okay, so you're pretty much out of the woods as far as that goes. But I'm 11 years supposed to.
Right.
But I think it's amazing that here's a prime example. Shelby was 7 years old when she had a stroke.
Right.
You were 35. I was 47, and there's many 20-year-olds there. I know prenatal, but the main thing is that you really want everybody out there be aware stroke occurs at any age. It doesn't know age.
Right. Yep.
It doesn't discriminate.
Yeah, actually, I knew somebody. I worked with somebody so I had worked as a stagehand back in the 90s. And after my stroke, the technical director of the theater happened to be one of my best friends, and he gave me some work there. One of the girls that I worked with had a stroke during birth. So she has never had use of her right arm. She's obviously she was working at the theater and whatnot, but she had never known life without a stroke, or life with being able to use both arms. So
amazing.
Yeah.
I don't think people understand. And I know Jim and I talked about a lot of what we hear at the stroke TV media is raising stroke awareness. Do you know that every somebody has a stroke every 40 seconds in the United States? But Jim, let me pick quick the commercial.
Oh, sure.
And let me see if I can replay. Raise stroke awareness. All right.
All right.
Let me play the commercial.
No. We belong together.
Well, I think it's amazing that Stroke TV is able to bless and be blessed to have people like you, Dick Poncho, Stroke, because I think we need to raise awareness so much, and it really do. I think it should be taught schools. I think as kids, if someone in the U.S. having a stroke every 40 seconds, I think the best place to start is the schools.
Absolutely.
Start teaching our children about stroke.
There was a story in the news a few years ago. There was a girl who I think was 8 years old. She had read in the dictionary. She looked up stroke and she read it. 2 weeks later, her mother had one. And because she read it, she knew the symptoms, so she immediately recognized it, called 911, saved her mother's life, just having read it in the dictionary. So a little bit of information like that could really, it could save a lot of lives.
Hey, let's, just speaking of the gym, let's bring up FAST again, because FAST is us, everybody out there in the outlets. You can run this test and anybody that you think may be having a stroke. So F is for.
So I'm gonna pause right there for 1 second. So when I was in the hospital, I passed FAST. There's a new one that they refer to as BFAST. That actually, it would have caught mine. It would have raised some flags. So the one I like to use now is BFAST. So the B is for balance. How's someone's balance?
Oh,
Are
really?
they able to walk and whatnot? If their balance is off, that's a possible sign of stroke. The E is for eyes. How is their vision? What do their eyes look like? My eye was starting to dart back and forth. Your vision might be going in and out. You might be losing it. It might be coming back. That's another possible sign of a stroke. Then the F is for face. You have someone smile, and if one side droops, that's a possible sign of stroke. It's probably a sign of stroke. That's one of the more common ones, actually. The A is for arms. You have them raise both their arms, and if one drifts downward or they can't raise it, that's another sign of stroke. Paralysis might be setting in. And the S is for speech. You give them a sentence and have them repeat it back to you. If it's slurred, if it's like the wrong thing coming out, that's another sign that they might be having a stroke. And then the T is for time. Time is of the essence. when you're having a stroke, your brain cells are dying, so you need immediate medical attention. What most commonly happens, most strokes happen to be ischemic strokes, which means you have a blood clot that's stuck in your brain, and they have a medication that can get rid of it. And I can't never remember the name of it. The initial
TBI.
Yeah, that can get rid of it, but it has to be administered within the first 3 hours of onset to really be effective. So if you notice any of these, don't mess around. Don't wonder if maybe it is a stroke, maybe it's not. Just call 911, get them to the hospital immediately.
Yeah, I think it really is fortunate to hear. So I really enjoyed you bringing B fast.
Yes, thank you.
Which what was one more time? You tell me what the B. I know fast means, but B means what?
B is for balance. Check their balance. Are they standing correctly? Are they able to stand without falling? The E is for eyes. You check their eyes. Check how is their vision. Is their vision okay? Is with me, like I said, my eyeball is going back and forth. So I would have been flagged on both B and E. I passed FAST, but I would have been flagged if they did the B fast. So that's the one that I've been spreading lately.
Yeah, that was one I honestly, until our show together, I have not heard the B fast.
Yeah.
I've heard it said, but I didn't know it had a acronym meaning. That B is balance, E is for eyes.
Right.
And you would have failed both of them.
Yes.
But Jim, we're going to wrap it up here, and I really appreciate it. I want to thank you for being here. Is there what would you say to anybody out there that may be younger, maybe? What would you say that battling stroke? Is there any encouragement you give them? What do you want to say in final words?
Sure. If you're watching this, then you've heard how to recognize a stroke, but it doesn't hurt to refresh this on yourself and really particularly spread this to others. Talk to others about it. Like I said, for a while I really didn't tell anybody, and since then. It took a friend, and unfortunately, it took a friend dying for me to fully realize that I had to say something. Since then, I've talked to probably over 1,000 people on stroke awareness. Between the fencing club and competitions and work, and other ways I've helped try to spread it, and it's been great. It was really rewarding. I went to a competition. A year after I did that initial competition where we were spreading stroke, and there was a younger kid who said, "Oh, I recognize you. You're the one who was talking about stroke." And he's repeating back to me the FAST and the symptoms. So it registered and it stuck. And that was just so rewarding to hear that.
That's exciting, Jim. Mm-hmm. I mean, if we can raise stroke awareness out there, tell someone, be fast.
Yep.
Know what that means. Because you could save someone's life.
Absolutely.
Doing that. But Jim, I want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you very much. Can I just want to thank a couple of people who've been very supportive. Mark Holbrow and Lisa Martini of Bucks County Academy of Fencing have been fantastic. They've actually loaned me the wheelchair that I'm using right now. And they've been supportive of the competitions and whatnot. And they've, let me keep coaching. My goal once I had the stroke and I was in the hospital, I just wanted to get back to coaching. And so that was something I was working towards, and they really helped me out there. So I want to thank them. And of course, like I said, my wife's been fantastic. 3M, like I said, we don't know what's going on now, but they have been great. They're letting me use a wheelchair at work. They changed my office, so I was closer to the door. There's a gentleman, a security person, Connor, he comes to my car every morning and gets me in my car, wheels me in.
No way.
He does not have to do it, but he does it every morning, and he's just fantastic. So there's just been a lot of people who have been really fantastic, and I really appreciate that from everyone. It's been just so helpful. So I just wanted to say that for people.
We want to say Merry Christmas, but to those people, Merry Christmas to you, Jim.
Oh, Merry Christmas.
Thank you for being here.
All right. Take care.
I'll talk to you later, bro.
All right.